2 months before our wedding, my fiancée wanted to explore her feelings for a coworker, and just like that, the ground shifted under everything I thought was solid. So, I ended everything and let them have each other. Guess who showed up again after 8 months? My fiancée wanted a hall pass to test drive her coworker before marrying me, and instead of fighting for scraps of dignity, I gave her something better. A permanent vacation from the relationship. Plot twist. He had a fiancée too. Read the whole thing. It's delicious. I'm Nate, 29, male, and I work in aviation safety certification and flight software compliance. Basically making sure the systems that keep planes from falling out of the sky meet federal standards. I spend half my life in hangars, airport offices, and regional terminals across the Midwest, and the other half on I-7 or sitting in MCI waiting for delayed flights. Pays well and I'm good at it. I was engaged to Katia for 14 months, together for almost 3 years total. She's originally from Ukraine, came to the States for grad school and stayed. I met her at a friend's birthday party at this rooftop bar in the Crossroads district, and she was stunning, like stop, mid-sentence, stunning, dark hair, sharp features, dressed like she just stepped out of a European fashion magazine. Way out of my league, or so I thought at the time, but she seemed genuinely interested. We talked for 2 hours about everything, her transition to American life, my weird job that nobody understands, the best barbecue spots in Kansas City, and she had this way of giving you her full attention like nothing else in the room mattered. I was hooked immediately. The first year was incredible. She introduced me to her world. These elaborate dinner parties with her friends where everyone dressed up and the food was always homemade and impressive. I introduced her to Chiefs games and hole-in-the-wall barbecue joints that she pretended to enjoy more than she probably did. We balanced each other out, or at least that's what I told myself. Looking back, I was probably more accommodating than I should have been. She had strong opinions about everything, where we ate, what we did on weekends, how I dressed when we went out, and I went along with most of it because it seemed easier and honestly I wanted her to be happy. My best friend Cody called me whipped more than once. I told him he was just jealous. He told me I was just blind, but I wasn't a complete pushover. When she wanted me to skip my cousin's wedding because her coworker was having a gallery opening the same night, I said no. When she suggested I should find a job that didn't require so much travel because she didn't like being alone, I told her my career wasn't negotiable. I had a backbone. I just didn't use it as often as I should have. The engagement happened 14 months ago at her favorite restaurant on the plaza. I'd planned it for weeks, coordinated with the staff, had the ring hidden in my jacket pocket all through dinner. The ring itself was my grandmother's, a vintage piece with a center diamond and 2 smaller sapphires. I'd had it reset in a more modern band because Katia had specific taste and my grandmother's original setting wasn't going to cut it. When I got down on one knee, she actually teared up, said yes before I finished the question, posted it on Instagram within 30 seconds. The picture got 400 likes in an hour. She changed her profile bio to future Mrs. before we'd even gotten the check. Her parents flew in from Chicago the following month to celebrate. Her mom brought traditional Ukrainian pastries she'd spent 2 days making. Her dad brought his handshake and his expectations. Her dad, Victor, was this old-school Eastern European guy who shook my hand like he was testing my grip strength. Her mom, Irina, was warmer, but clearly had high standards for whoever was marrying her daughter. I passed inspection, apparently. Victor told me privately that he was glad Katia had found someone stable, someone who would take care of her, and I took that responsibility seriously, maybe too seriously. We found an apartment together in a nice building near the plaza, split rent 60/40 since I made more, and started planning the wedding for early June. Her parents offered to contribute toward the costs, which was generous considering the budget kept creeping upward. Katia had a vision. The venue had to be perfect. The flowers had to be specific. The guest list kept expanding because she couldn't possibly exclude anyone from her social circle. By the time we locked everything in, we were looking at 140 guests, a venue in Parkville with a river view, a 6-piece band, and a photographer who'd shot weddings for Kansas City Chiefs players. The total budget had ballooned to $62,000. Her parents were contributing $20,000. I was covering the rest. Every vendor had deposits down. Save the dates were on refrigerators across 3 states. I went along with all of it, wrote checks, nodded at fabric samples, pretended to care about the difference between ivory and eggshell, because that's what you do when you're building a life with someone. You compromise. What I didn't realize was that I was the only one compromising. 2 months before the wedding, everything was locked in, venue booked, caterer confirmed, photographer scheduled, save the date sent. Her dress was being altered. My suit was ordered. We were on the countdown, everything moving forward with that steady, unstoppable momentum, and then Tuesday happened. I just gotten back from a 3-day trip to Wichita, certifying some avionics upgrades for a regional carrier, long days in a stuffy hangar reviewing documentation, running tests, dealing with mechanics who thought compliance was a suggestion. I was tired, but it was a good tired, the kind that comes from doing your job well, the kind that usually feels solid and earned. Katia was sitting at our kitchen table when I walked in, and she had this look on her face I'd never seen before, serious, but also almost rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. She told me she needed to talk to me about something important, about us, about the wedding, and I sat down across from her, still in my work clothes, assuming this was going to be about seating arrangements or some vendor drama. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, she said, about commitment, about being sure. I think we should take a break before the wedding. I asked what kind of break she meant, trying to keep my voice steady, and that's when she told me about Dimitri, a guy from her office, some project manager she'd been working closely with on a big campaign. She said they developed a connection, an emotional connection, and she thought before she walked down the aisle, she should explore those feelings just to be completely sure she was making the right choice. I sat there processing this, my fiancé, 2 months before our wedding, asking permission to pursue another man, a coworker, someone she saw every single day while I was traveling for work. I asked her how long this had been going on, and she got defensive, said nothing had happened, they'd just been talking, getting close. She said he understood her in ways that were different, that he was there when I was always gone, and the accusation landed exactly where she wanted it to, like I was somehow responsible for her developing feelings for another guy because my job required travel. So what exactly am I supposed to do during this exploration period? Wait for me. Give me space to figure out my feelings. She said it like she was asking me to pick up milk on the way home. If you really love me, you'd want me to be certain. You'd want me to come to our marriage without any doubts. She'd clearly rehearsed this whole thing, had her talking points ready, probably got advice from whatever friend told her this was a reasonable request. But here's where she miscalculated. She assumed I'd react the way I always did, accommodate, compromise, put her needs first. Instead, I stood up. No break, no exploration, no waiting around while you figure out if some other guy is a better option. We're either getting married or we're not. And if you need to explore feelings for a coworker, then we're not. Her face changed instantly. That rehearsed calm she'd been keeping up just broke. I'm not asking to break up, Nate. I'm asking for space. Time to process. Don't you understand the difference? I understand perfectly. You want to keep me on the hook while you test drive someone else. That's not space. That's treating me like a backup plan. I looked her dead in the eyes, and I don't do backup plans. She started getting emotional, said I was being unreasonable, that she was trying to be honest with me instead of just cheating behind my back, that most guys would appreciate that kind of transparency. I told her most guys would have walked out 30 seconds into this conversation. I was just slower to catch up. Then I asked for the ring back, and her whole attitude changed. The tears stopped. Her eyes went cold. You're serious right now? I've never been more serious about anything. It was a gift, Nate. You can't just demand it back because you're upset. The engagement is over. That means the ring comes back. That's how it works. We went back and forth for another 10 minutes. She tried guilt, then anger, then bargaining. I didn't budge. Finally, she pulled the ring off and threw it at my chest. I caught it clean right out of the air. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. But before she left, she turned around, eyes blazing. You will never find someone as beautiful as me. No one is going to love you the way I did. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Then she slammed the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. I stood there in our apartment holding my grandmother's ring, and the weird thing was I didn't feel sad. I felt relieved, like I'd been waiting for the other shoe to drop for months, and it finally did. Then I texted Cody. His response came back in under a minute. Finally, bro, took you long enough to grow a pair. Want hot wings? I'm on my way. Cody showed up 45 minutes later with a bag of wings from our usual spot, a notebook, and this grin on his face like Christmas came early. He'd never liked Katia, and he'd never pretended otherwise. Said she treated me like an accessory. Said she was more interested in having a fiancé than having me specifically. I always defended her. Told him he didn't understand her. Told him he was being unfair. Stood there like a loyal idiot insisting he just didn't see what I saw. Turns out he understood her better than I did. He dropped the wings on the table, cracked open a can of energy drink, and pointed at me like we were about to review game footage. Walk me through everything, start to finish. Don't leave anything out. So I did. I walked him through the whole conversation. Every word she said, every pause, every shift in her tone. He listened without interrupting, which was rare for him, and that alone told me he knew this was serious. When I finished, he just shook his head slowly. Honestly, I'm surprised it took this long. A woman who posts your engagement ring before she even calls her mom isn't in love with you, bro. She's in love with the announcement. He had a point. Then he pulled out the notebook and uncapped a pen like this was a business meeting. We're approaching this like a project. Deliverables, timelines, dependencies. You're serious right now? Dead serious. Most guys fumble breakups because they react emotionally instead of strategically. We're making sure you're not fumbling the bag. Wait, what? Shut up and listen, Nate. Within 20 minutes, he'd mapped out everything I needed to handle. The apartment lease, the wedding vendors, the joint accounts, the shared subscriptions, the narrative control. He'd even assigned priorities. High impact, low effort stuff first, the subscriptions. I hadn't even thought about those, which says a lot about where my head was. Katia and I had combined basically everything over the past 2 years. Streaming services, grocery delivery, cloud storage, music, fitness apps, meal planning services, all under my accounts, all with my payment info. She used them constantly. Her entire digital life ran on infrastructure I was paying for. Cody circled that section of his list 3 times. This right here, this is the petty satisfaction column. Not necessary for the breakup, but important for morale. He grinned. My morale specifically. I told him I didn't want to be petty. It's not petty. It's practical. Why should you pay for services for someone who just asked to explore another guy? He leaned back like the logic was airtight. Besides, watching her get logged out of everything one by one is going to be special. He had a point there, too, even if I didn't want to admit it. But first, I had a more important message to send. I knew Katja knew how she operated. The second she calmed down, she'd start working on the narrative, calling friends, texting family, framing this as me overreacting to a reasonable request. By morning, I'd be the villain who abandoned her over a simple conversation about feelings. I needed to get ahead of that, so I typed out one text message, kept it short, factual, no emotion. Katja asked me tonight to take a break from our engagement so she could explore her feelings for a coworker named Dimitri. I declined and ended the engagement. The wedding is canceled. I wanted you to hear this from me directly. I sent it to her parents, her sister, and 3 of our mutual friends who I knew would spread it further. Then I turned off my phone and finished my wings. Cody called this the narrative lock. Said in any breakup, whoever controls the story controls the outcome. I just made it impossible for her to rewrite what happened without looking like she was lying about her own family receiving that text. By the next morning, the text had done its job. Her sister had screenshot it to their family group chat. 2 of the mutual friends had already told their entire friend circles. One guy I'd sent it to worked with Katja at her agency, and by lunch, her whole office knew, not from gossip, from the actual facts sent by me before she could spin anything. She tried anyway, told people I'd overreacted to a simple conversation about pre-wedding nerves. But when people asked follow-up questions, her story fell apart. The details didn't match, the timeline didn't work, and everyone had already seen my text with the name Dimitri in it. Next, I called Victor, her dad. I'd always respected him, and I figured he deserved a real conversation, not just a text. He answered on the second ring, his voice heavy. He'd clearly already read the message. Is it true, Nate? What you wrote? Every word, Victor. He went quiet for a long moment, and I could hear him breathing on the other end. Then he asked what I needed from him regarding the wedding costs. I told him I'd handle canceling everything, and we could split whatever deposits were non-refundable. He'd contributed around $20,000 toward the venue, catering, and other vendors. I offered to cover the losses myself since I was the one ending it. No, his voice was firm. My daughter made this mess. I'm not letting you pay for her mistakes. In my family, when someone breaks their word, they bear the consequences, not the person who was wronged. Then he said something that stuck with me. He said he'd raised Katia to know better than this, that he'd tried to teach her that trust was something you build, not something you throw away for excitement. He said he didn't know where he went wrong, but he was ashamed of what she'd done. I told him it wasn't his fault. People make their own choices. That's generous of you, more than she deserves. I could hear Ina in the background, her voice tight and upset, asking what was happening, and Victor told her they would talk about it after he finished with me. Before he hung up, his tone changed, softer now, almost tired. I hoped you would be part of this family. Nate, you're a good man. My daughter is a fool. It landed harder than I expected, especially coming from an old-school Ukrainian father who probably was not easy to impress. It meant something. Wednesday morning, I started making calls. The venue coordinator was polite but firm about the cancellation policy. We would lose about $8,000 total between their deposit and the caterers. Victor handled that call himself and insisted on it. The photographer refunded most of my deposit because she was able to rebook the date quickly. She told me she was sorry things did not work out, but she had seen enough situations like this to know that calling it off now saved everyone more pain later. The florist kept $1,500. The DJ kept $500. The band was the biggest hit after the venue, $3,000 non-refundable, no exception. I called the rental company for the tables and chairs, the bakery, the calligrapher who had done the invitations, and the hotel where we had blocked rooms for out-of-town guests. By noon, I had made 14 calls and watched about $13,000 go up in smoke on a wedding that was not happening. By Wednesday afternoon, the wedding website was gone. I had built it on a platform under my email, so I deleted the whole thing. The registry disappeared with it. All those carefully selected kitchen items and fancy linens gone. The visual proof of our upcoming marriage erased like it had never existed. Cody had suggested this specifically. He said for someone like Katia, the public-facing stuff would hurt more than anything private. Her whole identity was wrapped up in how things looked to other people. Remove the optics. Remove her power. He was not wrong. Around for that afternoon, she started blowing up my phone. Texts, calls, voicemails. She had apparently gone to show a friend the registry and found nothing, then checked the wedding website and found nothing there either, and then called the venue only to find out her own father had canceled everything. Her messages moved fast from frantic to angry to threatening. She accused me of trying to humiliate her, of going behind her back to her own family, of being vindictive and cruel. I did not respond to any of it. That evening, I logged into all our shared accounts, starting with the streaming services. I changed the password on the main one, removed her profile, then moved to the next platform and did the same. Cloud storage, grocery delivery, music, fitness app, meal planning service, the language learning app she had used exactly twice. Everything. Cody sat across from me watching the whole thing with a grin on his face. He had brought snacks and looked like the Michael Jackson gif. This is better than any show we could have been watching on those streaming services, he said, shoving chips into his mouth. I knew it was petty, but he was right. Why should I keep paying for someone who had just tried to put me on a shelf while she shopped around? The texts that came after that were something else. Apparently, she had been in the middle of a show when everything logged her out. Then she tried to order groceries and her payment got declined. Then she could not access the playlist she had been curating for months. Then she tried to use the cloud storage where she kept all her design files for work and got a password error. The messages followed a clear pattern. Confusion first, then realization, then anger. She sent angry voicemails too, and her accent started slipping through more heavily. You cancel everything. Everything. I am in middle of show. Nate, you are so petty, so childish. I cannot believe I waste 3 years on you. Tai Sho Zuriv. You think this hurts me? This is nothing. You are nothing. Mudak. Cody nearly died laughing when he heard it. Bro, she is having an existential crisis. She tried to sign up for her own accounts, but some of the premium features I had been paying for were not available on the basic plans. Another round of messages came through, demanding to know if I was seriously going to make her pay full price for services she had been using for free for 2 years. I did not respond. That was the point. That is the best part, Cody said. The silence. Nothing will drive her crazier than you not engaging at all. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The apartment situation was the big one. We were both on the lease, which ran through October. Breaking it early meant penalties, and I did not want months of awkward cohabitation while she figured out her next move. There was also the risk of her trying to make my life difficult. And apparently, after the subscription shutdown, she decided to fight back. She called my company's HR department and claimed I had been harassing her. She said she felt unsafe and demanded they do something about it, except there was nothing to do something about. I had not contacted her directly since the lease meeting. Every message she sent had gone unanswered. The text I sent to her family was factual and contained no threats or insults. HR called me. I forwarded them the relevant screenshots showing that she had been the one sending aggressive messages, and they closed the case in about 20 minutes. Then she tried calling the apartment management to have me removed from the lease, claiming I was creating a hostile living environment, except I was not even living there at that point. I was staying with Cody temporarily while I figured out the move, sleeping on his couch and keeping my head down. The building manager, who had clearly seen enough breakup drama to write a book about it, was not interested in getting involved in our situation beyond what the paperwork required. She kept it strictly professional. Katia also tried to get ahead of me with the wedding vendors. She called the venue pretending she was handling the cancellation herself, trying to redirect my deposit refunds into her own account. The venue coordinator called me to verify before doing anything. When I explained the situation, she flagged Katia's number in their system. The caterer received a similar call from her and handled it the same way. Every attempt she made to get back at me fizzled out because there was nothing to get back at. I was not engaging. I was not attacking. And she had no idea how to fight someone who refused to fight back. Thursday morning, I went to the leasing office and laid everything out. The manager was sympathetic. She said if one of us wanted to take over the lease solo, that was possible, or if we both wanted out entirely, there would be a 2-month penalty. I asked specifically about my options. She told me that if I could find a replacement tenant and Katia agreed to sign off on the lease, I could be out within 30 days. I started making calls right there. A guy from my company had been looking for a place closer to downtown. I told him about the apartment, sent pictures, quoted him the rent. By Thursday afternoon, he wanted it and said he could move in by the 15th if the paperwork worked out. Now all I needed was Katia's cooperation. I texted her a simple proposal. I would move out. She could stay in the apartment through the end of the lease, and I would cover my share of the penalty for breaking it early. Clean break. No drama. Everyone moves on. She called instead of texting back. Her voice sounded different this time, softer, almost careful. I do not want you to move out, Nate. I want to talk about this. Really talk. There was a pause, and then she stumbled a little over her words. I was hasty. Dimitri is not what I thought. I made a mistake raising it the way I did. That is not changing, I told her. You can either agree to the lease terms or we are both stuck in an awkward situation until October. She went quiet for a moment, then asked where I was planning to go. Austin. My company had a position open there for months, regional manager for the Southwest Territory. More money, better weather, a fresh start. I had already spoken to my boss. The job was mine if I wanted it. The silence on the other end stretched long enough for me to picture her trying to process it. I think she assumed I would stay in town, that this was something she could still maneuver around. Finding out I was leaving the state entirely was not part of her plan. She agreed to sign the lease paperwork the next day. Friday morning, we met at the leasing office. She looked like she had been crying, though I could tell some of it was performance layered over real emotion. We sat across from each other signing documents, barely making eye contact. Before she left, she tried one last time. Can we just slow down? Maybe you are making this bigger than it needs to be. She looked at me with those eyes that used to work on me. I never actually did anything with Dimitri. It was just feelings. Feelings I could work through. I held her gaze steadily. The fact that you could even ask for what you ask tells me everything I need to know. Someone who wants to marry me does not need to explore other options first. That is not how it works. She opened her mouth like she was about to argue, then closed it again. Something in my voice must have made it clear there was nothing left to negotiate. She walked out without another word. Saturday morning, Cody showed up with his truck. We spent 8 hours packing and loading everything I was taking with me. The apartment had been mostly furnished when we moved in, so there was not much to argue over. My clothes, my gaming setup, personal items, some kitchen equipment I had bought myself. Everything else stayed behind. By Saturday evening, my half of the apartment was empty. I left the keys on the counter with a note that said nothing more than, "Good luck." Cody thought that was too kind. He had wanted me to leave a printed screenshot of her asking for the break. But I was done. I did not need the last word. I just needed to be gone. Sunday morning, I was on I-35 heading south toward Austin. 12 hours of open highway and podcast episodes about aviation history filling the silence. I passed through Oklahoma City around lunch, stopped for gas in Dallas around dinner, and gradually Texas plates began to outnumber everything else. I crossed into Austin city limits just after 9 p.m., the skyline glowing against the dark sky. New city, new job, new life. I did not look back once. The first few weeks in Austin were a blur of logistics, finding an apartment, setting up utilities, getting oriented at the new office. My territory covered Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and parts of Colorado, which meant lots of regional carriers, lots of small airports, and plenty of flight time. The Austin office felt different from what I had left behind. It was more relaxed, more collaborative, and far less tangled in the corporate politics I had grown used to navigating. My boss, a former Air Force guy named Paul, cared a lot less about optics than he did about outcomes. He never asked how many hours I logged or how many meetings I sat through. He only cared whether operators passed their certifications and whether clients were satisfied. That clarity was refreshing. During my first month, I spent more time in the air and inside hangars than I did behind my desk. One week I was in El Paso for a comprehensive documentation review. The next week I was in Phoenix handling software certification testing. After that, I was driving out to a tiny airport in the Hill Country where a charter company needed compliance consulting because their previous specialist had botched something and they were staring down potential fines. Each successful certification felt like a small victory. Every new client felt like confirmation that I had made the right decision. The work itself had not changed, but my mindset had. I was not just showing up anymore. I was engaged. The pace kept me busy in the best way, which was exactly what I needed. Cody kept me updated on everything happening back in KC. He still had mutual friends who were more than willing to share details, and according to him, it was chaos. Katia tried to control the narrative for about 48 hours before she realized it was pointless. The message I had sent to her family shut that door. Her own father was telling people she had asked for a break to pursue a coworker. Her sister was openly saying she could not believe Katia would throw away what she had. The story was out, and it was not flattering. Apparently, after I left, she doubled down on Dimitri. Maybe she figured that, if she had lost me over him, she needed to prove it had been worth it. They made things official about 2 weeks after I moved. Cody delivered updates like a sports commentator. Week 1, they were inseparable, eating lunch together at the office every day. By week 3, she was posting couple photos with captions about finding her person. By week 5, she was introducing him to friends as her boyfriend. It was moving fast, which made sense. She needed it to look like destiny, not a mistake. Then week 8 hit. Dimitri had a fiancée, not an ex-fiancée, current fiancée, a woman in Chicago he had been engaged to for over a year. Katia had been the side piece. All the emotional intimacy, the late nights at the office, the connection she thought was so different from what she had with me. It was nothing more than a distraction for a man bored in his own relationship who saw an easy opportunity. She found out because his fiancée found her Instagram. Apparently, One of Kadia's photos had location data that did not line up with Dimitri's supposed work trip. The fiancé started digging, found Kadia's profile, connected the dots, and uncovered an entire relationship her future husband had been hiding. The confrontation did not happen quietly. Comments appeared under Kadia's photos calling her out. Messages went to mutual friends explaining everything. Screenshots were shared across platforms. The fiancé had proof. Text messages between Dimitri and Kadia. A restaurant reservation he made under a fake name. Hotel charges listed on a credit card statement. She posted it all. Overnight, everyone in Kadia's circle learned that she had left her fiancé for a man who had been deceiving her the entire time. And it got worse. Dimitri did not defend her. When confronted, he threw Kadia under the bus without hesitation. He told his fiancée that Kadia had pursued him aggressively and that he had only been too polite to shut it down. He claimed she misinterpreted professional friendliness as romantic interest. He painted her as desperate and delusional. His fiancée did not fully believe him, but she wanted to. They went to couples counseling and within a month were posting photos together again like nothing had happened. He kept his relationship, his reputation, his stability. Kadia was left with public embarrassment and the harsh realization that she had gambled everything to be someone's secret. Cody called me the night it exploded, laughing so hard he could barely speak. He said he had never seen karma move that quickly. I did not feel joy. It was not that. It was more a quiet sense of confirmation. The decision I had made was the right one. And now there was undeniable evidence. After that, Kadia disappeared from social media. No more curated posts. No more filtered glimpses of her perfect life. The image she had spent years constructing was gone. And everyone knew it. 3 weeks later, her agency let her go. Officially, they called it restructuring. Unofficially, one of her co-workers told Cody that clients had started requesting different designers. No one wanted their brand tied to someone whose personal drama had just unfolded publicly across Instagram. In that industry, reputation is currency, and hers had evaporated. Meanwhile, my life in Austin was gaining momentum. I hit my sales targets for the first quarter. 3 different clients sent positive feedback about my certification work. I started building routines. Gym in the morning. Work during the day. Exploring the city on weekends. I found a great apartment near downtown with a view of Lady Bird Lake. And for the first time in a long while, everything felt steady. I started hiking the trails on weekends, getting out early before the heat settled in. I joined a recreational volleyball league through work and ended up making friends with a few guys from the office who were also transplants from other cities. All of us figuring things out as we went. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living my own life instead of constantly adjusting to what someone else wanted. I was not bending myself around another person's moods or plans. I was just doing my thing. Honestly, it was great. 6 months after moving to Austin, I was in a better place than I had been in years. I felt more settled, more confident, more like myself. The job turned out to be even better than I expected. My territory was expanding, my numbers were strong, and my boss was already talking about a promotion to director level within the next year. Around month 4, I started dating casually. Nothing serious, just easing back into it and seeing what was out there. Then I met Rebecca. She was a sales engineer for another aviation company. We met at a conference in Dallas and ended up at the same dinner table with a group of people. By the end of the meal, we had spent almost the entire time talking to each other and ignoring everyone else. She was smart and direct, with a dry sense of humor that kept catching me off guard. Our first real date was at a taco place she insisted had the best al pastor in Texas. She was right. We talked for 3 hours, and it felt easy in a way my relationship with Kadia never had. She knew the short version of my story. She did not push for details. She just said it sounded like I handled it the right way and then changed the subject. With Rebecca, I did not feel like I had to perform. I could just exist. She liked me for who I actually was. If I came home exhausted and wanted to order pizza and watch something mindless, she was all in. If I suggested spending Saturday hiking instead of at some trendy brunch spot, she grabbed her boots without complaint. When Cody came down to visit, he met her and later gave his verdict. She was a keeper. He said she was the first girlfriend I had ever had who seemed genuinely interested in me instead of just interested in having a boyfriend. Through friends back in Kansas, I occasionally heard updates about Katia. She had moved back to KC after staying with her parents in Chicago for a while. Her design career had stalled after the drama played out so publicly in front of her professional network. Victor and I stayed loosely in touch. Every now and then he would text me, send something about the Chiefs, or ask how work was going. He never mentioned his daughter directly, but it was always there between the lines. 8 months after the breakup, I had to go back to Kansas for work. A major client meeting and regulatory review required my specific expertise, so I would be in town for 5 days. I was not worried about running into Katia. I knew she had moved back to Kansas City, but it is a big place. The odds of randomly crossing paths felt slim. The work went smoothly. 4 days of meetings, inspections, and documentation reviews. By Thursday evening, I was done and had one free night before my flight home Friday afternoon. Cody insisted we meet up and suggested a new place in the Crossroads district that had opened after I moved. Supposedly great food. I agreed. The restaurant was packed when I arrived. Cody had grabbed a table near the back and already ordered an appetizer. We spent the first hour catching up properly. His job, my job, Rebecca, his latest dating disasters, all the usual stuff. Then I saw her. Katia was across the restaurant sitting with 2 women I did not recognize. She was dressed up with full makeup, the whole presentation carefully put together. But something about it felt off. The confidence she used to wear so naturally looked forced now. She was laughing a little too loudly and scanning the room between bites like she was checking who was watching. I watched her for maybe 30 seconds. She had lost weight. The outfit looked cheaper than what she usually wore. I guess the agency job had not been paying what her freelance work once did. She had not noticed me yet. I thought briefly about leaving, but Cody had already followed my line of sight. When he realized who I was looking at, he broke into a wide grin. "Do not you dare leave," he muttered under his breath. "This is perfect. The universe just handed you a gift. Accept it gracefully." I told him I was not interested in drama. He shook his head and said it was not about drama. She needed to see me happy and moved on. That would say more than anything I could ever tell her. So I stayed. I kept talking and eating like nothing had changed. About 20 minutes later, she saw me. The polished smile on her face faltered for a split second before she put it back in place. She pulled out her phone, checked her reflection, touched up her lipstick, and then walked over to our table. Cody leaned back in his chair and said quietly, "Do not give her anything." She stopped beside us. "Nate, I did not know you were back in town. Just here for work. Leaving tomorrow," I said evenly. I did not stand. I did not offer her a chair. She lingered, clearly waiting for something more. When I gave her nothing, she kept going. "How are you? Is Austin treating you well?" Then after a pause, she asked, "Are you seeing anyone?" "Austin's good. Job's great. And yeah, I'm seeing someone. It's going really well." The shift in her expression was immediate and impossible to miss. It was that split second when someone realizes the safety net they assumed would always be there is gone. The backup plan she thought she could circle back to no longer existed. "Are you happy?" she asked quietly. "Actually happy? Yep, I am." I did not hesitate. I did not soften it. I just answered. She swallowed and glanced down for a second before looking back at me. "I've been thinking about everything, Nate. I know now that what I asked for was wrong. I wish I could take it back." I gave a small nod. "I appreciate you saying that." She stayed there, clearly waiting for me to fill the silence with something else. Something emotional or nostalgic or forgiving. I did not. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Katia." That was it. Then I turned back to Cody, picked up my fork, and went back to my food like the conversation had reached its natural end. She lingered for a few seconds, unsure what to do without a reaction to work with. I did not look up again. Eventually, she walked back to her table without another word. Cody waited until she sat down before leaning forward. "Dang. Did you see her face?" I shrugged. "Yeah, whatever." He lifted his glass with a grin. "Here's to growing a pair at exactly the right time." I'm telling this story at every barbecue for the rest of my life. Knock yourself out, I said. We finished our meal, paid the bill, and called it a night. The next afternoon, I caught my flight back to Austin. When I walked out of the terminal, Rebecca was there waiting. She smiled the second she saw me, wrapped me in a hug, and asked how the trip went. We headed to our usual dinner spot and slipped right back into easy conversation. And honestly, I have never been happier. Guys, we are so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. It really helps us reach that 1,000 mark.